Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got helicopter pilot Luke.
Maverick. Is that one of them?
No, Mike.
Goose.
You're seriously the worst. No, it's
long neck.
No, it's Airwolf. Remember
Airwolf.
Were you too young for Airwolf?
Not Wolf.
Wolf. Why? Come on, I'm from Pittsburgh. It's Wolf. Airwolf.
I am too young for Airwolf.
You didn't watch Airwolf?
No, I've never heard of this.
It was a 1980s TV show, and the helicopter could go quiet and make no noise, and they would like kill. It was basically, you remember Knight Rider?
I do remember.
It was Knight Rider, but a helicopter.
Oh, perfect. That sounds like a great show.
And not the Hoff.
Well, that is less good. Question for you. Did they fly an Apache AH-64 attack helicopter?
No, they did not.
Oh, well, then that show is garbage because what we're talking about today is the Apache AH-64 attack helicopter.
You sound like the movie guy with this whole deep voice thing you're trying.
It's not
is
a
not
deep
working
voice
for
that
me.
I'm trying. This is
saying.
just my excited voice about the Apache AH-64 attack helicopter.
So what is the Boeing currently?
Oh, is it a Boeing now?
AH-64 Apache. It is, and you're going to do some details. I'm just going to do a high level.
So many details.
It is a 4-blade twin-engine attack helicopter that has a tail wheel type landing gear. To catch drive this thing, they sit front to back, not side by side, which is interesting.
Literal cats?
No, not literal cats.
Oh,
you know what I mean by cats.
Gotcha.
They both can fly the helicopter if they need to, and they can both shoot stuff from the helicopter. But the primary pilot is in the back, so the gunner.
If we were flying the helicopter, would you be the flyer or would you be the shooter?
Oh, I would definitely be the shooter. I'd be like, pew, 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 bad guy, pew, pew.
You're probably a better shot than me anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like you probably have a much steadier hand than I do. Like I think you'd be a little better.
Depends on some things.
I feel like you'd be a little better. It is obviously an attack helicopter. It was first flown back in '75. We'll talk about the details of that. It features nose-mounted sensors for them to do all kinds of like sensory stuff, night vision. It has all kinds of guns on it. Pew, pew, pew. Like I said, the coolest part, and I didn't see this until I watched a video. You know me, I never watch videos.
No, never.
But the gun, I didn't realize, hindsight, I was stupid. I just assumed like the whole entire helicopter pivoted and the gun was stationary, like on an airplane. Like airplane guns are stationary, I think.
They can't move?
But when you look at this thing, it pivots. It's on like a gimbal and it like points wherever it wants to point. And
that makes sense.
But I didn't realize it could like the helicopter could be making a left and you could be pointing the gun to the right.
Yeah, makes sense. I feel like in any video game that I've ever played, that's not how it works.
Exactly, and maybe that's what I'm thinking is like the video games.
Yeah, that would seem like a pretty poor design though if you can't move the gun around.
Yeah. So it carries a bunch of Hellfire missiles. It has this 30 millimeter chain gun, which just calling it a chain gun is awesome.
Wasn't the Dungeons and Dragons group in Stranger Things called Hellfire?
They were called Hellfire.
Just making sure.
Okay. That was so good. Did you
watch?
It
was super good. Yeah, super good. Sorry.
So at a high level, I just wanted to give like a quick synopsis.
Yeah, that was perfect. Can I talk about how it all got started, Luke?
I sure hope you do. You're going to talk about the development and like what it replaced and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, maybe we'll see what comes out of my mouth. So the Apache's origins date back to when the U.S. was like, yo, Vietnam, we're out of here. The Army turned its attention back to the mechanized infantry and armies of the USSR. So back to focusing on the Cold War, right? Mm-hmm. How do we blow up all of those tanks that Russia has? Not unlike certain things going on today. Helicopter gunships had proven to be super successful, or useful at least, in Vietnam for delivering like really precise strikes, giving air support to troops, things like that. But the Viet Cong were like really lightly armored, right? They weren't going to be shooting things out of the sky so much, and it was easier to blow that stuff up. The Red Army had a lot heavier anti-aircraft defenses, which was no good, and they had really big armies of tanks. So the little miniguns on the helicopters that they were using weren't really going to blow up the tanks. So they needed something else. So how do you solve this problem, Luke? You hold a contest. The U.S. Army Advanced Attack Helicopter, AAH competition, ran from 1973 through 1976. So I like to look at this as like just anyone in the world was like, I drew this sweet picture of a helicopter. I mailed it to the government and they were all like, man, this helicopter, like it's green, like it's got a gun. Look, they got a gun on the roof too. Like, I think that's how they picked it. But in reality, that's not exactly
not at all
how it went. No. So the program was initiated to develop the attack helicopter for anti-armor operations in the day and the night in crappy weather, because it turns out there's some crappy weather out there. And really just trying to be able to not only help the troops in the field, but more safely be able to gun stuff down in your helicopters. This was also to coincided with the cancellation of the Lockheed AH-56 Cheyanne program. Also, Cheyenne's a cool name. Both competitors for the AAH award, the Bell YAH-63 and then the Hughes at the time YAH-64, first flew in September of 1975, as you mentioned. The two flying prototypes of each were delivered to the U.S. Army for evaluation in May of 76. But they disliked the Bell tricycle landing gear and the two shaft rotor. So the Army ended up going with the Hughes design, picking it December 10th of 76, and it was awarded the contract for full scale engineering in 77. Fun fact for you, Luke, I found this really interesting.
Shoot.
Per custom and even regulation now, permission was obtained from Apache elders to name the helicopter after the Native American tribe. So whenever they name these helicopters, obviously like Cheyanne, Apache, after the Native American tribes, they have to, by law now, Blackhawk, go and get permission from the tribes to use those names. So that was pretty interesting.
Maybe the Washington football team could take a little...
They're the Commanders now, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, they are the Commanders now? I didn't...
Yeah. They should have stuck with Washington football team, I think. Entered service in 1986. Boy, that's a long time later. Seeing combat 3 years later. According to Boeing, there are more than 1,200 in operation across the world. That's a lot. Together, they've accumulated over 4 million flight hours, 1.3 million of which have been in combat. That's pretty significant, especially considering all the training and stuff you'd have to do. In 2013, the 2000th AH-64 Apache rolled off of the lines in the Mesa, Arizona Boeing facility. And this is another fun fact, like a far larger production number than basically any other aircraft that the military sees. So pretty cool.
A little more history for you. The reason why they were replacing the Cheyanne, the AH-56, was they were starting to go with for things from the U.S. Air Force and Marine Corps. So like the Thunderbolt and the Harrier, that's the plane that can lift off vertically.
Cool. Yeah.
They just lift off. And in 1948, there was something called the Key West Agreements, and it actually made the Army not allowed to actually own and operate fixed wing aircraft. So they could only, so the Army only has helicopters. So fixed wing planes have to be Air Force, Marine Corps, or Navy. So
that's interesting.
And my guess is this was just like a bit of a power grab, maybe from, whoever it was.
Well, clearly that's why I was like, who goes to Key West to do this stuff and make these? Oh, yeah. Okay. I see. So this was like a vacation and this is what came out of it. I gotcha.
And they needed something that had better performance, better firepower. And one of the coolest things that they needed to have that was specifically called out, so you talked about this proposal, is they needed to do something called no-E flying, which is nape of the earth flying. And what that means is, like, if you see pictures of this thing in action and like movies and stuff like that, they are literally like, it seems like feet above the ground as they're maneuvering. So ton of maneuverability. And there were multiple proposals. You talked about the two that made it through, and then obviously the one that won. But yeah, and the four blade rotor. The reason why that was interesting was not only was it more tolerant to damage, because there's obviously 4 versus 2, it actually was much more stable than a 2-blade rotor design. So, because you could just shoot. Apparently, they designed the rotors so that you could shoot them with essentially a 1-inch round. You could shoot them with, and they would still operate and not have any issues.
Yeah, I'll get into it more, I think, if we have time when we talk about the weapon systems. But the old helicopters that they're replacing, the Cheyanne, I believe, they basically had to stay up in the air in the open for like 30 seconds. And this was more about the missiles than anything, to be able to blast something. So it just left them out in the open to get destroyed. And these take like seconds to be able to do it because of the laser guided missiles. But anyways, before we get into that great technology, Luke, it's time for a word from our sponsor.
I have to assume it's the U.S. Army.
No, they don't have. Oh yeah, they are allowed helicopters. They're not allowed fixed wing
aircraft. Yeah, so planes.
But it wasn't them anyways. We don't have one. Everybody hates us. But we do have shout outs because not everybody hates us. First, we have Emmanuel L. I'm an engineering student in my local community college. I enjoy listening to your podcasts at work and during my commute to school. I'm planning to transfer to a 4-year university after graduating with my associates. I was hoping that you guys could talk about public universities with engineering programs such as NCSU. It's North Carolina State University, for those of you who don't know.
Not in the know.
No, I really appreciate y'all for taking the time to read my email. Have a nice day. So I actually read this one, so you're welcome. I know a lot of the engineering schools that we focus on, other than like maybe Penn State and we just did Georgia Tech, are a little more MIT-ish. North Carolina State, have it added to the list.
We have a new series, James, not great engineering schools. Our new series is okay engineering schools.
Engineering schools you can actually get into.
That's a new series.
Next shout out, Stephen T. There are so many emails that are like this. My girlfriend and I, well, this one, she's an engineer, are engineers and love listening to y'all. She has been listening to y'all for a while now, and she introduced me to y'all as well. We love listening to y'all on the drives we take together and hope to continue to hear y'all's amazing podcast. Cheer, y'all.
So she sounds like an amazing woman, and he's a very lucky man to have her if she is smart enough to listen to us.
I think that as well. If she's smart enough to listen to us and introduce him to us, like, we'll win right there. Like, you put a ring on that right now.
Yeah, I feel like we're in the wedding party, James. I mean, just saying.
That would be our second unprofessional engineering wedding. I would be into that.
Would be. We had one. That's right.
Yeah, JP. That was so good. So I would love to hear a conversation between two engineers, like the debates about crazy stuff.
Oh, see, I could not, if my wife was
I don't want to do it.
Like an engineer, like I would, it wouldn't be good. Wouldn't be good. I like that we have different backgrounds and interests and educations.
That's good. Yeah. She is educated, and then there's you.
Yes.
Anywho, if any of you would like to get a shout out, if you want to say hello, if you want to, I don't know, beg for stickers that I probably won't end up sending, go ahead and email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, share. We love hearing the reviews. Please do those. And as always, you can tell your smart devices to play the Unprofessional Engineering Podcast. And you've missed this, the last one. Make sure you hit the Unprofessional Engineering store. Just Google it. You'll find it. And buy a t-shirt or whatever else we got on there.
Will you find it if you Google it?
I'm guessing you would. But yeah, just check it out and help James and I in the retirement.
Yeah, man. If you want an overpriced t-shirt of questionable quality, go to unprofessionalengineering.com. How it works, Luke. Should I talk about that?
I would love to hear how it works.
The AH-64 featured you know what I think it is? I think it's The Price is Right. I'm like, who remember Roddy? I feel like that's my voice for like
Oh,
the come on down.
that is what you do.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Anyways, it featured a T-tail design with the tail rotor mounted midway on the vertical stabilizer. So this was redesigned during phase 2 development. So it wasn't as successful as they wanted to be, like low set and fully movable horizontal stabilizer and high mounted tail rotor. As you can see now, the AH-64, it's powered either by two General Electric T700 GE701s or T700 GE701C turboshaft engines. They are not weak. The engine is capable of producing over 1,600 shaft horsepower. Each turboshaft engine produces a rotational force or torque through the drive shaft, which exists or exits out the front of the engine. They're kind of crazy. You mentioned the 4 main rotor blades are part of the fully articulated rotor system. It allows the rotor blades to flap up and down, lead and leg, so fore and aft movement, and twist, all in response to aerodynamic forces and control things. So like you're saying, like super maneuverable, really a lot more capable of handling inclement weather and things like that because of just this, what I find to be a pretty crazy design. And then the tail rotor of the Apache also like looks really interesting and unique if you look at it. The blades aren't oriented at like a perpendicular 90 degrees from each other like they are in most helicopters that you would see. The rotor system actually has 2 sets of blades mounted on like one set in the front and the other at a 55-degree angle, which looks really odd if you look at them in a picture. Some say that the design makes the blades more efficient. Others say that the tail rotor system was designed to be quieter. But however, the unusual arrangement is required because the 2 sets of blades use a delta hinge. Wasn't it a delta wing that we talked about with like the Concorde or something? Mm-hmm. This allows the blades to simultaneously flap and feather, kind of like those 4 rotor blades we talked about. Mm-hmm. With this type of hinge, the 2 sets of blades can't be mounted perpendicular from each other, and this still allows for the pitch changes. So again, greater control of and maneuverability of the helicopter.
Something I thought was interesting before you move on, just to break up the flow a little bit.
No, let's break it up.
So I obviously Googled, Apache helicopter, and
did you literally do it just right now?
No. Oh, I just did it again because I wanted to find the video. But apparently, like there was just some big news just like 3 days ago. So this is July 13th, 2022. It was the British Army. So there's a new Apache AH-64E model. Yeah. It has full color displays because apparently, like in the video, the guy's talking. He's like, yeah, we'd be on the radio and they'd be like, oh yeah, look at the red car, and the screens were black and white. And it was just, he's like, now when they say red car, we can like shoot the red car. And they have bigger pictures. They have improved ways. Of getting information back and forth. These new models have a higher top speed because they dropped the Rolls-Royce engine because there was a mismatch between the transmission and the engine where the engine was actually overpowered. So now that they're, I guess, better matched, so it can go 186 miles per hour. There's better target acquisition. They have the Romeo variant, which just sounds really cool, of the Hellfire missiles. Cool. And they're going to get new ones. Boeing's going to be making them for the British Army, and they're going to be delivered in 2025 for a mere 300 million quid, pound. I don't know what quid. I think
a quid and a pound is the same thing.
Okay, so 300 million pounds, whatever that is.
For what? A missile?
No, so the investment. So that's they're paying Boeing.
It's like, that's a heck of a missile. My goodness.
No, that's what they're paying Boeing for them.
Very cool. Good job, Boeing. Getting back up, get that stock back up. Fun fact for you, Luke.
Shoot.
Although these suckers weigh in at almost 9 tons when they're loaded, it's not light. It's around what I weigh. There's also somehow they can still pull off barrel rolls and loops as they're flying. Helicopters can do barrel rolls?
I think only certain helicopters can.
I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible.
It sounds absolutely. So I don't mind the blades being above me, but whenever I get into an aerial vehicle and then the blades are below me, like
right?
that just seems really just generally like not a maneuver you'd want to do.
No, hopefully they don't do that one a lot. Before we get into anything else, let's take a break for this week's Luke's Rant.
Okay, so it's related to helicopters, and this is I've seen all this stuff in the news recently about flying cars. This idea that people want to develop cars that, and they're helicopters essentially is what they are. They're not, fixed wing vehicles just because you don't have landing strips and stuff like that. So you could just land in your front yard or backyard and take off.
Wasn't that Pinto that we talked about that was a flying car that hit a tree or something and the guy died? Wasn't it a plane style?
His was a plane style, but all the ones you see in development are talking about they're actually talking about making these as helicopter type flying cars. And like the thought of being able to be like in downtown Pittsburgh in like 5 minutes in rush hour, or go out to the airport, or go to maybe not Cleveland, maybe Cuyahoga Falls or something like that. Like the idea that you could do that. But just the other day, I'm driving and I stopped fully at my stop sign.
Did you?
1,000.
Complete stop?
I did. 1,000, 1,000. And I go to take off. The guy perpendicular to me lays on his horn like I just like stole his wallet or something like that, flipping me off, starts to get out of the car.
No.
And I'm like, and this is residential, so I'm not driving fast, and I'm like looking in the rearview mirror, and he's like standing, getting out of his car, standing, like egging me on to like fight him because I apparently he was supposed to go at a stop sign. So take U.S., and I think road rage is an American thing. You never hear of it anywhere else, but you take road rage, and all of a sudden you put people in flying cars.
Ooh.
I think all these companies developing flying cars should just cease and desist, because I just cannot imagine road rage, flying cars, like people running into each other. All these videos you see on TikTok and YouTube of like. It's just a bad idea to put people in flying vehicles that are going to have road rage. Like, you should have to pass a psychological profile test to be able to, and I imagine you probably have to if you're a pilot, right?
Probably.
And if you drive a flying car and they develop these things, you should have to pass a test that proves you're not going to be an idiot and like want to beat me up for going through a stop sign.
I have no interest in you getting beaten up or me flying a car. None of that interests me, Luke.
Really? You wouldn't like the convenience of being able to be somewhere like...
So in theory, yeah, I want to like pull up to the Squirrel Hill tunnels and be like, oh no, screw this.
I'm out.
Fly over the mountain instead of like sitting there. Sure, that sounds nice. But like you're saying, like, I mean, I don't want to be on the road when my wife is driving. I don't want to be in the air when she's flying for sure. So that's what I'll leave it at. Well, very nice, Luke. I'm glad you didn't get beaten up by Stop Sign Man. He's probably listening and he's like, oh no, that was Luke.
He's going to figure out where I live.
Yeah, probably. All right, where do you want to go next on this, Luke?
So I want to dig a little more into the weaponry and specifics, if that's okay with you.
Me too.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you talked about the engines. You talked about some different things. I want to talk about, so the combat range is 260 nautical miles. I don't know why they make them nautical versus land miles. I don't know what the difference is, but 260 nautical miles.
You do know the difference. Go back to our wacky units of measure episode.
I forget we do stuff, James.
I
can't remember what I had for breakfast, and you want me to remember that. It has a combat endurance, they call it, which is 2.5 hours, which seems like a lot considering you're carrying all these rounds and you're flying, dodging bullets and stuff like that. It has a gross weight, I think you mentioned this, 20,000 pounds. So let's talk about the ordnances. This is the weaponry that it has. They have 16 Hellfire missiles, 8 on either side. Those are little round tubes.
They don't go pew-pew, right? What do they do?
They go...
Nice.
Kind of their thing. They got 16 of those bad boys. They have they have 1,200 30 millimeter rounds. So you know what a millimeter is. So these things are bigger than an
Not
inch.
really.
These things are bigger than an inch. Look at our units, podcast we did. 1,200 of these. The fire rate of the chain gun is 600 to 650 per minute. So to put that, so basically in 2 minutes, he's empty. So my guess is they're not like, if I was flying, like if you're the gunner or I'm the gunner, I'm like,
you are, I'm flying.
And I'm literally shooting every bullet for 2 minutes straight. But my guess is they're more like, they're doing a little bit at a time, like controlled bursts is my guess.
Probably, I'd imagine.
But that is, and then you can obviously, for special situations, they can actually add specific armor. They can be an escort vehicle where they don't have the Hellfire missiles attached, and they're more like just escorting, ground troops and things like that to provide air cover. And then the speed goes up, the distance goes up. But they can also attach all kinds of other missiles to this in different configurations. So it's not just the Hellfire missiles that they have. But I thought that was just. And the coolest thing that I thought was they invented this thing. It's the heads-up display. So this is like the stuff you see in movies. So normally you'd think like there's a crosshair like on a screen, and you turn it, and then that's the gun turning, and then you're shooting. It's a heads-up display, so it's in the lens of the helmet that they're wearing. So I could be looking left and pointing the gun right and shooting at a bad guy over to the right, and I could be looking left because it's all heads-up display.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. So the integrated helmet and display sight system, the IHADS.
I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. You got it.
It's a super unique feature for this helicopter. So it's unlike night vision goggles, which apparently we have to call NVGs, which are mounted on the pilot's helmet in front of their eyes, kind of like wearing big glasses.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy. So the imagery from this device is presented to the pilot's eye using a separate display system. So the pilot must be able to direct where this thing's pointing. So basically there's a 1-inch TV picture tube mounted on the right side of the helmet, and the image from the TV tube is reflected off a small lens in front of the pilot's right eye. So therefore, the pilot flies with one eye on night vision and one eye like aided with night vision, while the other one is unaided. How does that not throw you
imagine
off, right?
How good these cats are that are flying these things? I think they could have saved themselves some money. They should have just did some Google Glass.
Check out our episode.
Check out our terrible episode on terrible Google Glass.
Oh my goodness, was it bad? Fun fact. All totally in line with what you're talking about, Luke. Kind of, sort of, not really fun fact for me, at least. In order to learn to fly the Apache using this weird night vision / not nice night vision setup, students first fly during the day in, quote, the bag. The pilot's cockpit is enclosed by a tarp, which allows no outside light to come into the cockpit. The instructor pilot, meanwhile, remains unhampered in the CPG's cockpit. The student must rely entirely on the imagery and symbology provided by the various systems that we just discussed. They say
that's a nightmare for me.
It's a great confidence builder, even though everyone has all these horror stories. Furthermore, it's much safer to train when at least one crew member is operating under daylight conditions.
Wow.
You're in a bag.
That's crazy.
Bag, it's awful. It's the most awful thing ever. One other thing I wanted to call out. I don't know why I was so interested in the seats. And you mentioned how like the seats are offset. Both people could control the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
Both people can gun, etc. But the seats themselves, like the crew's protected by 2,500 pounds of light boron plating and Kevlar lined seats. And the fuel tanks have self-sealing protection systems. And then they have laser and radar warning systems to alert when missiles are coming, things like that. But like how, like, so if someone does happen to get something through the helicopter, your seat's also protecting you with all of this Kevlar and boron and other things. Just fascinating to me. We don't have too much time left, but where would you like to go next?
So I have just a little more kind of like fun history, like fun fact history. So the first operational Apache unit was the 7th Battalion, 17th Cavalry Brigade. They began training on the AH-64A on April 1986 out of Fort Hood, Texas.
Fort Hood.
The very first like military operation they did with this was in Panama. And then obviously Desert Storm is, I think, what everybody thinks of when they think of the Apache helicopter. So all the imagery you see. So they were instrumental in supporting Desert Storm starting on the 17th of January, 1991.
I understand that all of that was very serious and, no joking about it and whatnot. But I swear that some of the footage that they have of the Apaches during Desert Storm looks like B-roll, like film that they made just to show off these sweet things. Like, it's crazy what they do.
And they were obviously involved in the Bosnia, Kosovo in the 90s. They were involved in Enduring Freedom in 2021, Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2023. And they're still, I think if I read it correctly, there's no replacement planned until 2025. So there's at least 3 more years before they even start the process of thinking of a replacement, which would take multiple years to do. So,
and it's like, yeah, it's a big rollout process too. So the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, the FARA, will be the go-to attack helicopter by 2030, probably, except we'll have delays, I'm sure. Even though it's like a light attack reconnaissance craft. The remaining Apache helicopters, though, are going to get upgraded to, like what you said, the AH-64E variants. So they have D variants now, but they're going to upgrade them to the Vs. And this will help the remaining fleet work through 2040. It might not be the go-to copter at that point, but it'll still be there to go blow stuff up.
And we're not the only ones that have them. Boeing actually sells them to Israel, the UK, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and a handful of other countries. So interesting.
I'll put this out there, Luke. If any of our listeners from Boeing are interested, we would be willing to accept a custom wrapped Apache helicopter for the official vehicle of Unprofessional Engineering. No?
Well, first of all, like, neither one of us could drive it. I'm dyslexic.
Is it even driving?
I'm dyslexic and you're too short. I imagine there's a height requirement probably.
I'll put blocks on my feet or like books to sit on or something, right?
Yeah, I'm the worst person. So Luke, go left. Luke, go right. Look right.
Real quick on the history one more time, Luke, a couple shout outs I wanted to give. So prior to the 1990s, you all basically never saw a female pilot in the seat of an attack helicopter. Since December of 1993, women have made a very important and noteworthy contributions to the Apache pilot corps. The first woman to fly and operate this, quote, flying tank was Gwen Shallow, who did Bosnia military service. And then another notable female pilot is Angela Williams, the first African-American woman to pilot an Apache. Took the helm in the year 2000 and said she wasn't concerned about being the first Black female to fly the craft. She just cared about getting the job done. She says she doesn't consider herself a pioneer, but hopes her story can inspire others. So I wanted to put that in there so that it could continue to inspire others, Luke. Very cool stuff. Anything else you wanted to share with our listeners before we go?
If you had to choose between being a helicopter pilot or a plane pilot?
Gosh, I do not want to do either.
What if you had to choose? Like you're going into the military right now, you're deciding which one you want to do.
I think I would do plane. I feel like whenever you hear about helicopters, they're crashing and killing Kobe Bryant or somebody. So I don't.
The movie Black Hawk Down. I feel like, helicopters are much closer to the action. So I guess if you were brave, but like you and I'm
not. Yeah,
I want to be in a plane as far away as possible. I would choose plane as well.
I'm behind the computer screen guiding some. I don't even want to do that. No, I don't want any of this, Luke. Before we go, Luke, could you give me one more Hellfire missile noise? That was very good.
The same one or not?
It was close. It was a more distant missile that you fired there. Hopefully you all enjoyed the Apache attack helicopter episode here. I know somebody recommended this one, so here it is for you. We do listen to our listeners. If any of you would like to suggest some episodes, tell us what we missed about the Apache for us to amend never in the future, or anything of the sort, go ahead and email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time,
See ya.